Hey guys, David Duford here. We're going to talk about what makes for the best final expense telesales specific carriers for 2022. We're first going to talk about what factors I look at when trying to decide which carriers to use in my lineup as an agent, and especially for my agents. And then also I'm going to list the top 5 final expense telesales carriers that I like the best, as well as some honorable mentions. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Number 1, verbal signature process. So the number one thing you should understand when selling final expense over the phone is to make sure that you have an easy to complete verbal signature process with all of your final expense carriers. So the reality that you will have to deal with as a telesales focused final expense agent is getting our prospects, as I like to call Mildred, to sign the application without needing a paper written signature or to do an electronic signature. So the solution to this is to use a verbal signature process that eliminates the need to use paper, wet apps, as we say, or wet signatures, or an electronic signature, which your clients will not know how to do half the time. And so that allows you to do everything on the first call without any frustrating secondary steps for electronic or paper signatures, so that more often than not, your policies that close actually close without any sort of follow-up requirements that would have been necessary had you have to do especially email or paper signatures. Factor 2, instant decisions 90% plus of the time. It's very important when you do telesales, and this is really true of all final expense, either face-to-face or telesales, is to understand that the nature of your sales presentation is that is a one-call close. The purpose and point that makes final expense so lucrative is that you can wrap the deal up on the very first call. The same day you meet them is the same day you should be closing them. And what you want to make sure of is that as a part of that closing process, that you get an instant decision where the client is either told thumbs up or thumbs down, or is counter offered some maybe higher rated policy. Either way, you know before you end the call exactly where you stand on underwriting. Because if you don't know where you stand, then you run the risk of getting a rate up after the fact, after time has passed, and many of our clients are world-class procrastinators, as they say, and may change their mind and not end up doing business with you where they would have easily done that had you wrapped up everything and got that instant decision up front. So my point is, the important thing is, as we go through this list of carriers we're about to look at, or any carriers that you're looking at, you have to make sure, for especially the primary carriers that you're going to be doing business with, that you use carriers that are going to issue an instant decision at the end of that first phone call. So by the time you hang up with the prospect, you know the deal is done, and you don't have to worry about, will this client get approved, and will this client actually accept it? Because it's all done and it's over, and you can move on to the next sale. Factor number 3, super easy to use. So with telesales, you obviously lose the capability to sell in the same face-to-face environment, right? So everything about telesales, in a sense, is more difficult because you don't have that face-to-face interaction that builds rapport and trust. So what you want to facilitate the process in telesales with is easy-to-use carriers. You want to choose carriers with simple-to-complete verbal authorization applications. You want to choose carriers that have simple-to-complete electronic applications on your end, not the clients. We want them to do VApps, right? The point is you want to make sure the carriers you choose are easy, they're not frustrating to use, and they're going to make your life simpler, not more complex, because the more complexity you have in your insurance sales system, regardless of what it is that you sell, the more problems you're going to run into, the less policies you're going to issue, and the less money you're going to make. Now let's take a look at the top 5 favorite final expense telesales carriers. Before we jump in and talk about what I feel are the best final expense telesales carriers, let me make sure you guys understand I don't have a favorite. What I believe in the brokerage world is that we have to have options because there's no such thing as a best carrier. There are best carriers for certain circumstances, but may not be best for other circumstances. And the solution, if you believe this way, is to carry a multitude of carriers. So that way you have multiple options at disposal for whatever the circumstances you run into, so you do the best by your client. So now that I've clarified that, let's go through the list and cover what I feel are the best final expense telesales carriers. Prosperity Life Insurance. So I particularly like the final expense product with the Prosperity company called New Vista because it does a great job of covering all the bases mentioned earlier. It's easy to use. There's an instant decision, a telephonic signature for the client to verbally sign off of, and you get a decision instantly, yay or nay, the vast majority of the time. A couple of reasons otherwise that I like Prosperity from an underwriting standpoint is that big thing is you get an instant decision. It's very flexible with insulin-dependent diabetics. There's no cutoff period where if you started insulin before a certain age, you're not going to be allowed to have coverage. They have liberal lookbacks on heart issues and cancer. And for some mental health issues, it is definitely very flexible. Also, for the graded and level and the modified products, it pays full commission, whereas most carriers cut your commission lower if you write something other than the level plan. With Prosperity, is not the case. You get paid the full comp no matter what product you end up writing. And all forms of payment are acceptable, including debit cards, Direct Express, certainly checking and savings accounts. Also, we have Social Security direct deposit billing set up, so that helps the billing procedure that much better. And the people at Prosperity are super helpful. They are easy to deal with, and they're very responsive, especially through email as you need things done. So to me, Prosperity is one of the first companies I look at with starting my agents with when it comes to the final expense telesales game. Number 2, Royal Neighbors of America. So another great company to use in the telesales arena for final expenses, Royal Neighbors of America. They're a fantastic company that, again, hits all of the high notes of what you want to see when it comes to a final expense carrier. For example, their underwriting is super liberal, very easy to use. They've got a 3-page prescription knockout list, so it's very easy to see if the prescriptions the client takes is going to be acceptable or not. You get an instant decision at the end of the phone call the vast majority of the time. And it's just a breeze to use. Everybody loves them. It's a verbal application. The entire thing is, when you're doing telesales, you don't have to do an electronic app. You just phone it in, and the client or the underwriter types up the application for you, and you end the call. It takes a little bit longer because of that, but you still get that instant decision. And the product itself is just super easy to use. So a couple of reasons I like Royal Neighbors. First of all, they're very friendly with diabetics. If you started insulin after 30, you're accepted as level, assuming everything else is acceptable. Same thing with diabetic neuropathy, 2-year look backs on heart issues, 2-year look back on cancer, and no height weight chart. They're available 50 to 80 years old. They're available in most states. And they're just super easy to use. They got extra benefits for discounts with dental, vision, and hearing. They're just an easy company to use with extra benefits. And you'll find them very, very useful as a telesales agent. Favorite carrier number 3, Aetna's CVS Health product. So I like the Aetna CVS Health product really as a niche product when the other carriers out there that offer first day full coverage, for some reason, underwriting-wise, won't offer it for this particular client. So what's cool about the CVS Health product is that issues like COPD, very common issue we run into, are considered for first day full coverage rate at a standard pricing. Same thing with a variety of heart ailments. Let's say you've had a heart attack, you may be accepted for first day full coverage if the heart attack occurred a year to 2 years ago with Aetna, whereas with most other companies they'd be declined or put on a 2-year wait product. Also, Aetna has the no height weight chart, so height weight is not a factor to determining insurability. They go up to age 89 as far as getting your older clients covered. And of course, the brand name Aetna and CVS Health, most people have heard of these companies, and that just helps that much more in getting their trust and commitment. So one of the downsides to Aetna CVS Health product is it doesn't always issue an instant decision. Sometimes you have to wait a couple of days, and that's the sole reason I don't use Aetna as a go-to product for kind of like my first choice, because it sometimes doesn't issue a decision. And if I'm in a situation where I'm on the phone, which we all are, and we're trying to close a deal on the first call, I don't like to use carriers that may leave me hanging. I'd rather use one of the other companies, Prosperity or Royal Neighbors, because they do issue an instant decision. So it's when those situations where we have underwriting niches that we use Aetna, that's where it comes really in handy, where it's worth kind of taking a chance to get our clients better coverage, to reduce the risk of replacement for those particular niche situations. Favorite carrier number 4, Great Western Guaranteed Issue. So for the cases where we need a carrier that does not ask health questions, I believe Great Western is the best telesales-based product you can use. Here's a couple of reasons why. First of all, it's available from age 40 to 80 for the Guaranteed Issue product. The electronic application is super simple to use. when you conduct a phone interview, it's really just having the client three-way in on a recorded line and you reading some disclaimers and them agreeing to it. And that's really the extent of how you get the application completed and submitted. The problem with most of the other carriers that are guaranteed issue out there is they either don't advance commission or they require an electronic signature, which again, clients just don't know how to do this in the final expense space about half the time. And they're just kind of unwieldy to use. So Great Western represents that well-balanced, telesales-friendly carrier for guaranteed issue. And it's what we try to preferentially use when no other option is available. Favorite carrier number 5, Guarantee Trust Life. So I particularly like Guarantee Trust Life Heritage Plan because it does some things that no other carrier does. And let me kind of give you a quick rundown of what I believe are the biggest benefits to GTL's product. So first of all, the product only has 6 questions. It's very flexible on underwriting. You can get all sorts of things covered with this product that other only guaranteed issue carriers would cover. For example, things like congestive heart failure, drug abuse issues, heart issues within the last 12 months. These are great reasons to use GTL, whereas other products may end up only being a 2-year wait. Now, to add on to that, the GTL product, what makes it special from a coverage standpoint is starting in the 2nd year of coverage, the client gets half the death benefit. So unlike waiting 2 full years of something like Great Western, AIG, or Gerber, if they were to qualify for GTL, let's say you get them a $10,000 plan, well, in the start of the 2nd year, they're going to get $5,000 in coverage, and then the start of the 3rd year and beyond, they get the full face amount. So for me, with my clients that we have to put into some kind of graded or 2-year wait product, I prefer to do GTL when they qualify because I get more coverage faster for my clients. They appreciate it more. That helps me with my persistency. And all in all, I do a better job for my client. Added, the nice thing about GTL is that it has a very easy e-app and verbal application process that just takes a couple of minutes. They don't do an MIB or script check. So if the client can answer no to everything, then they are approved for coverage. So it's just super easy to use. So I highly recommend, guys, if you don't have this yet, you should absolutely pick it up. Reach out to me. I can definitely help you with that. But GTL is a fine product to use, and you should be using it to some extent in your final expense telesales game. And now let's talk about some honorable mentions. So a few more carriers here that I want to throw out there as being an option. Maybe you are locked up and you can't use those carriers that I've just described because the IMO won't release you or something like that. So I wanted to provide a few more other options that I think are decent to use, that do a great job, but for whatever reason, we don't focus on them, but plenty of agents have definitely confirmed that they're good carriers to use. So the first one here, honorable mention, is American Amicable. They got an excellent product. Underwriting is very similar to Prosperity's, arguably an easier process in getting the application approved and to go through with. So American Amicable, great product. You should absolutely consider writing that product in telesales on the final expense side. And the last product here on the list is Liberty Bankers Life. Very similar to Aetna's underwriting. There's a little bit more difficulty in getting things approved. My experience has been some of the way the language of the application reads versus how it actually ends up getting approved or not is not always congruent. So it's harder to use in my experience. And we used to use them, and it got to the point where it was very frustrating. So I shifted gears with my guys, and we went to Aetna instead as the kind of choice carrier for niche cases. But Liberty Bankers is not a bad company at all. Maybe something worth considering, especially if you're locked out of Aetna and you can't move it over and you're looking for a good second option to use. So let me know what you think about these companies. Are there any that I didn't mention that you'd like to mention below? Agents would love to hear your perspective, so feel free to use the comment box to leave suggestions there for agents to review. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Thumbs up the video, subscribe if you haven't, and we'll see you next time. Y'all take care.